Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another segment of Feature Friday. Today we have Asheleigh Forsborg with us. Hi, Asheleigh. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career path you're working in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the, excuse me, I am the managing director for the Peyton Walker Foundation, and I am a career nonprofit employee. I started working in local parks and recreation as a program manager, so handling swim lessons and exercise classes and all of that fun stuff. And then I transitioned into fundraising for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So I handled all of our special events, fundraisers, both for kids' sake and a golf tournament. And then I moved on to the Alzheimer's Association, where I managed our Walk to End Alzheimer's program, and that was fantastic. And then I kind of tried to expand my role and my skill set by working in the annual campaign, major gifts, grant writing, um, and I switched to Central Pennsylvania Youth Ballet and handled $1 million grant through the state and handled major gifts and grant writing and annual campaign and lots of things. And then unfortunately, I was laid off during COVID. And so I was connected to the Peyton Walker Foundation, and I have been the managing director since 2021. And I manage the day-to-day operations of our organization. So heart screenings, AED donations, CPR classes, and all the fundraising that goes along with it to allow us to continue our life-saving work.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you're a jack of all trades out here.
Yeah,
And now that you're currently at the Peyton Walker Foundation, can you tell us a little bit about how it was created and what the mission is of the program you work for?
absolutely. So the Peyton Walker Foundation was really started out of grief and trauma. So on November 2nd, 2013, Peyton Walker, a 19-year-old physician assistant student at King's College, went into cardiac arrest. And unfortunately, they were not able to resuscitate her in time. And so, the Walker family, the world lost Peyton that day. Around 4 or 5 weeks later, her family looked through her belongings, and the shirt that Peyton was wearing the day that she died said, "What we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others and the world remains and is immortal." And her parents took that as kind of a challenge to make sure that their daughter's legacy continued on. And so they decided that day to start the Peyton Walker Foundation. So the goal is that hopefully they can spare other families the grief that they live with daily of losing a child to sudden cardiac arrest. So in January of 2014, the Peyton Walker Foundation was incorporated. And since then, our mission has been increasing survival rates of sudden cardiac arrest. And we have done that through offering free heart screenings to youth, to donating AEDs to nonprofit organizations and youth sports teams, and to teaching CPR to thousands of people all across Pennsylvania. And then most recently in 2021, a law, Peyton's Law, was passed that increases the education for student athletes and families when a child participates in PIAA athletics. So there's a form that you have to fill out, a physical form, and on that, some additional information about sudden cardiac arrest has been included, and about how a normal EKG can detect some of those hidden heart defects that cause cardiac arrest. So again, hopefully encouraging families to get that heart screening so that they can detect those underlying heart conditions that lead to cardiac arrest. We can't prevent every cardiac arrest, and we know that. And that's why we offer the CPR training and the AED donation program, so that no matter what part of the process someone is in with cardiac arrest, we're hopefully able to support them to increase the survival rates.
Right. That's such a tragic story. And unfortunately, something like this did have to occur. But the steps that were taken to create the Peyton Walker Foundation is going to help thousands, even millions of people. So what you guys are doing is a great job. And a little bit more about cardiac arrest. Can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we sometimes hear cardiac arrest and heart attacks used interchangeably, and they're very different things. So a heart attack is a plumbing issue. There is one or more blockages to the coronary arteries within the heart. So typically someone who's having a heart attack is going to have chest tightness, arm pain, jaw pain, nausea, sweating. They're not going to feel well, and they're going to be able to tell you something is not right. Whereas a cardiac arrest is an electrical issue. And what happens is, before your heart beats, an electrical impulse shocks your heart to force those muscles to contract. And that's what causes your heartbeat. So when cardiac arrest occurs, that electrical impulse that tells the heart to beat abruptly stops. So your heart stops beating. It can be shaking in the chest, which is called ventricular fibrillation, and it's just kind of shaking in your chest cavity. Or it could be beating so quickly, it's called ventricular tachycardia, that what happens is the heart doesn't get to fill with blood and pump that blood to the brain and the rest of the body. And so with either condition, there is no longer oxygenated blood going to the brain. And without oxygenated blood to the brain, you are dead. And so when someone is in cardiac arrest, they are clinically dead until they can be resuscitated with CPR and an AED shock. So if you think about it in terms of your house, when there's a plumbing issue, you usually see water start to slow going down one of the drains or the tub. With the electricity goes out, it just goes out instantly. So that's the same way with the heart. And so as many people saw with Damar Hamlin, when he went into cardiac arrest, it was a collapse, immediate collapse. There was no warning sign. And that's how cardiac arrest is. People could have no warning signs at all and still go into cardiac arrest. However, there are some signs and symptoms that people experience, but a lot of times they don't recognize those signs and symptoms as a symptom of potential cardiac arrest. And those symptoms include dizziness, shortness of breath, heart racing, and excessive fatigue or being tired for no reason. So for example, if I'm training for the marathon and my runs have been fine, I haven't, I'm tired afterwards because I've run a long time, but nothing out of the normal. And then all of a sudden I start to go for runs and it feels really hard, or my heart seems to race afterwards and my heart rate won't go down. Those are some signs and symptoms that maybe something is not right. And so maybe we should go talk to a cardiologist or our physician and see if maybe some further testing should be done. Again, it's just because you have one or more of those symptoms doesn't mean you're going to go into cardiac arrest. It just means there might be some underlying issue that should be addressed. We should never ignore symptoms, no matter what the symptoms are.
Yeah. And how important in this situation, once we identify the symptoms, once we recognize what cardiac arrest is, to get that immediate treatment?
Yeah, so cardiac arrest, as I mentioned, when a person goes into cardiac arrest, they are clinically dead. And so what happens is, as soon as that cardiac arrest occurs, there is a clock that starts. For every minute that someone is in cardiac arrest, they lose 7 to 10% chance of survival. So think about that. Every single minute, you're losing 7 to 10%. So after 10 minutes of being in cardiac arrest, you really don't have a chance of survival. And so what we try to teach for free through free demonstrations or through certification classes is that it's important to recognize cardiac arrest. So what does recognizing cardiac arrest mean? The person is unresponsive and not breathing. So with Damar Hamlin, he collapsed. So that's unresponsive. You shake him, not coming to. You check if the person's breathing. No breaths are coming out. That is not breathing. So immediate 911. So that's call. Then you start pushing hard and fast on the chest. That's CPR. And then you shock with an AED. So call, push, shock. Those are the 3 steps that you take. That's it. Call, push, shock. And the key is to do it as quickly as possible. It's better to start CPR on someone who doesn't need it rather than not provide CPR to someone who does. And if someone doesn't need CPR, they will tell you, get off of me, that hurts, right? So we need to just act, and we're not doctors. We are not expected to diagnose the patient. All we're checking for is signs of life. So if they're not moving, you shake them, you yell, they don't move. All right, we're calling 911. We're going to start compressions. And if they don't need it because maybe they fainted or they're in a diabetic situation, whatever the case may be, they'll come to and say, ow. And then with the AED, AEDs are very smart machines. An AED will never shock someone unless they are in a shockable rhythm. So if someone's having a heart attack, this AED will not shock them because it's not an electrical issue. So you still perform CPR on someone who's having a heart attack, but the AED won't shock them. If I put an AED on me right now, it would not shock me because I am alive. I'm in a sinus rhythm. I don't need it. So there's no harm in putting an AED on someone who is in cardiac arrest or who collapses. Whether they're in cardiac arrest or not, that's not for you to figure out. The AED will do that for itself.
Right.
And the biggest thing is that just act. That's it. We can't stand around and just look at someone and think someone else will take charge of the situation. We all have a responsibility as citizens, as members of our community, to act when someone needs our help. So
Right.
that's what we try and teach. Call, push, shock, and just help someone when they're in need.
Yeah. I think that's all great advice. And honestly, I am CPR certified as well. So everything you just said is also like a good recap just to always touch back on. And it's like, am I following the steps of procedure here? Am I identifying if the person is breathing or not? Can I actually provide them assistance if they're breathing or they're having visible symptoms of their heart rate working? Like, don't do the compression, stuff like that. So everything you said is 100% a recap for me, but at the same time, like you said, just act. Like, we have to act upon impulse here to make sure we're helping give someone the best standard of care.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We know not everyone is going to give perfect compressions every single time. It's a
Right.
stressful situation, but do the best you can at the time. And that's all we can do. All of us can only do our best. And so, go take a CPR class. Do some refresher classes if you've been CPR certified in the past. Try and be prepared mentally and physically so that if this situation ever occurred, you're ready to act.
That makes 100%. So, speaking upon the CPR training, who can become certified in CPR training and why is it so important to have this certification?
Yeah, so really anyone. I mean, we recommend ages 12 and up to be CPR certified. And the reason being is that under the age of 12 years old, you know, individuals may not have the strength, the body strength to compress the chest. Because when you think about it, when you're doing CPR, you are doing the job of the heart. You are squeezing the heart to pump oxygenated blood to the body, and then you're letting the chest recoil so that it can fill back up with blood again. That's a lot of pressure and a lot of strength that you need to do to push down the sternum, push down the ribs to really compress the heart. And so under the age of 12, they just might not have that strength. They may not also have the capacity to sit through a 2 or 4 hour training.
Right.
Nothing against them. But so after the age of 12, you're able to come to a community CPR class. Lots of organizations, offer these. We do, American Red Cross, American Heart Association, lots of organizations, your local EMS agency. So just look around, Google CPR classes near me, and I'm sure you'll find lots of options that are maybe low cost, fit in your schedule. And it only takes 2 to 4 hours, depending on the type of class you take. You might take a first aid CPR class, which is 4 hours, or you might just take a CPR class, which is 2 hours. Either way is great. If you're a lifeguard, you have to be certified in all of these things. If you babysit or have young children, all of these things are important because sudden cardiac arrest is not an old person or an adult issue. It affects everyone, no matter the age. Anyone can go into cardiac arrest. And so that's what's really important for us to educate people on is, we lose about anywhere between 7,500 and 10,000 young people under the age of 25 every single year to cardiac arrest. So it does happen. It's not just athletes, it's anyone, babies, young kids on up. Anyone can go into cardiac arrest. It's typically an underlying heart defect that wasn't detected previously. There can also be traumatic issues like what happened with Damar Hamlin. It could happen through a car accident, getting hit by a baseball pitch. There's lots of things that can happen. But, there are preventable ways. You can get surgery to fix those underlying heart defects, but they have to be known. You have to get screened. You have to figure out if they're there. And then if you can't prevent them, making sure people are ready to act, knowing where local AEDs are. Wherever you go, just like you look for the exits or the fire extinguishers, look for where the AEDs are to make sure that you're prepared in case it's one of your loved ones or you see someone who's in cardiac arrest. Most cardiac arrests occur inside the home. Most of us don't have AEDs in our home. So the best we can do is provide CPR until EMS arrives to take over.
Right. I think that's a good point to recognize too, just in public spaces, finding the AED and just identifying that, just like you said with the fire extinguisher, because there's signs everywhere, but we don't think it can happen to you or to someone you love. But just being cognizant of that and recognizing like it could happen to the person walking by or like the person you're walking with. It could happen to anybody at any time. So just always being prepared is important. And about the CPR certificate, how long does that last and when should you get that renewed?
Yeah, so typically they are good for 2 years, and then you can get them renewed every 2 years after that. There might be different types of qualifications that I'm not aware of, but ours are 2-year certificates, and I believe most of them are.
Gotcha. I think that's a good piece of information to know just so people can understand that it's not a once and done type deal. It's you have to go back and do it again just to make sure you're refreshed on all your skills and you understand and if everything and if anything's changed or anything's improved to understand those new features.
I was just about to say, things change sometimes. When I was a senior in high school, I was a lifeguard, and they taught us with CPR to give breaths. We don't give breaths anymore unless it's a known drowning situation or it's a small child or an infant. You don't give breaths because we have oxygenated blood in our body already. Breathing isn't necessary. And so, we teach a lot of people who haven't had CPR in 20 plus years, and they still believe that breaths are a part of it, but they're not. And so that's why it's important to keep up with your certification to make sure
Right.
keeping up to date with the research. Research shows breaths aren't important anymore, so that's why we don't teach it. But maybe someday they'll bring them back. I don't know.
Right.
But we have to make sure that we're keeping up with the current information and the current best quality CPR.
Right. Because obviously this is a life or death situation. So you want to provide the best care as possible. And you guys
Absolutely.
also mentioned you provide heart screenings. Why are they important and what's the minimum age that you can get a heart screening at?
Yeah, so we believe, and actually the American Academy of Pediatrics believes that every child should have a heart screening at some time throughout their life, at least one. And the reason is that a normal well child physical listens to the heart through a stethoscope, which is important, but a stethoscope can't pick up those underlying electrical issues that can cause sudden cardiac arrest. And so our free heart screenings, absolutely free. We don't look at your insurance. It's nothing to do with any of that. It's just strictly a free heart screening. We do a vitals check to make sure kids' BP is normal. We do an EKG on every single child, which is it is just sending a little bit of an electrical impulse to see what your heart rhythm looks like, basically. Because if there are structural issues with the electrical impulses, it can pick up on that. And then the doctors on site, cardiologists, will look at those readings of everything. And based on the readings, based on family history, based on symptoms, they can then refer the kids to receive an echocardiogram right on site. And an echocardiogram, for those who aren't aware, is basically an ultrasound of the heart. So it gives you a visual of the structure of the heart. So, for example, I have a congenital heart defect. I was diagnosed when I was 2 years old, and I get an echocardiogram every single year. I get an EKG every single year just to make sure nothing has changed with my heart defect. And so I have a 7 and a 3-year-old. I went to my pediatrician and asked them to give my daughters a heart screening because it's a congenital heart defect I have. They didn't really want to do it, but I said, no, we're going to. And so we got my daughter screened at 5 years old. So there's, as long as your child can sit still long enough to receive an EKG, because it takes about 60 seconds for these 12 stickers around your body to pick up the electrical impulse. As long as they can sit still long enough for that, anyone can get a heart screening. And so, we really just recommend that everyone throughout their childhood get at least one, and then your cardiologist can make a referral to see if you need it a little more often than that. And yeah, it's really simple, painless. It doesn't take a lot of time. We have a free heart screening actually coming up on November 18th in Lancaster at McCaskey High School. So it's a really great opportunity for families to have that peace of mind. If you have any sort of family history, or you just want to make sure nothing's going on with your child, we recommend doing a heart screening.
I think that's great that you guys just include everybody and you do stuff like this, because some people might not be able to afford it, or they just don't know where to look for these resources. So I think what you're doing is great, and it's going to benefit so many people in the long run. So to get more people involved, how can teams, organizations, schools, other facilities get involved with you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, the best thing to do is go to peytonwalker.org, and you can see all the various services we provide. So if your team doesn't have an AED, apply for one. We donate AEDs every quarter to organizations, to youth sports teams, to nonprofits. We want to make sure that wherever people gather, there's an AED. Sudden cardiac arrest for athletes is more likely to happen during practice than a game. So it's great that teams have AEDs at games. But we want to make sure they also are bringing them to every single practice. So that's one opportunity. If you want your student athletes, you want your parents, you want whoever to be CPR certified, we offer CPR certification classes. Very inexpensive, $25 per person. You can't beat that.
Right.
And then we do the free heart screening. So, we have a free heart screening coming up in Wilkes-Barre this Saturday. We have a football team, the entire team coming, and they're all going to get screened. And, why not take advantage of that free opportunity? Feel better mentally that you've ruled out any sort of issue, and, just take that time to learn CPR. We provide free CPR training during our heart screenings while people are waiting for the results. You get two birds with one stone. You get free CPR training and you get a free heart screening. What can be better than that?
I personally couldn't tell you what could be better. So that's great what you're doing. And we've also had representatives come out to our Rising Stars Football Academy camp and combines. What do you guys enjoy most about working with us?
Yeah, so we love the opportunity to get out in front of young people, adults, and teaching CPR, talking about the signs and symptoms, and really helping everyone be prepared in case they encounter a cardiac emergency. We're so appreciative of having that platform that you provide, and coming out to the camp and really just being a part of this community of people who want to make sure that their student athletes are, prepared no matter what.
I think that's good to know. And it seems like you're very passionate about what you do right now. So would you like to leave everybody listening with any other advice I didn't touch on, or any suggestions that they should take? And is there a best way to reach out and contact you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway is, listen to your body. If you're experiencing any symptoms that are abnormal to you, talk to someone about it. I know I was a college athlete. I know that it can be scary when you experience a symptom and you're afraid that it's going to limit your playing time. I get it. But your body, your health, your life is so much more important than playing that next down. And so we really want people to listen to their body and care for their bodies. Be careful of what you're putting inside your body. Those energy drinks, those supplements, we need to be aware of everything that we're consuming, because it does have an effect on our body. And so That's number one. Number two is be prepared for a cardiac emergency. Call, push, shock. If you encounter someone that collapses, unresponsive, not breathing, call 911, push hard and fast on the chest, and shock with an AED when possible. Get certified if you can. It's not necessary, but get certified so you feel prepared. If anyone wants to learn more about us or get involved, you can go to peytonwalker.org. My email address, our phone number, all of that is there. See how we can work together to help save lives from cardiac arrest.
I think that's a great piece of advice to leave off on, is just listening to your body, because your body literally tells you what you need and what you don't need. And if you listen to it, you're golden.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for all this advice today, Asheleigh. I really appreciate you coming out and speaking with us. And what you guys are doing is great. And we're so happy to have you guys working with us. Again, thank you everybody for listening. I'm Asheleigh Hudak, and we'll catch you on the next Feature Friday.